historical memory of the West is based on the concept of the New World as a blank slate. We are accustomed to perceiving late 15th century America as a vast, sparsely populated space awaiting the European plow, cross, and law. School textbooks present Christopher Columbus's discovery of the continent in 1492 as the inevitable beginning of an era of European domination. It is believed that the technological gap, and more importantly, the biological vulnerability of indigenous peoples to diseases from the Old World, made colonization a matter of time rather than probability. This terra nullius paradigm became the foundation of modern Western civilization, allowing Europe to export its surplus population and draw on seemingly endless resources. What if this key factor had been absent? Let's imagine a scenario in which the biological barrier works differently. Either contact with pathogens occurred centuries earlier and immunity has already been developed, or epidemics are local in nature. In this world, Columbus ships encounter not dying tribes, but vigorous armies and thriving metropolises. Europe, torn apart by internal crises, loses its piggy bank and is forced to build relations with America as an equal partner, not as prey. Watch the video to the end to find out how history might have changed if Europe had never colonized America. To understand the scale of the changes, it is necessary to look at the real situation on the continent before the arrival of Europeans. By the end of the 15th century, Mesoamerica and the Andes were centers of civilization that were on par with, and in some ways surpassed, the states of Europe in terms of organization and engineering. The Aztec Empire Triple Alliance controlled the territory from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was a marvel of hydraulic engineering, a city on a lake with a population of about 200,000, a system of dams, aqueducts, and floating gardens called chinampas, which ensured food security. It was a rigidly structured empire with compulsory education for children of all classes and a powerful military class. Further south along the Andes mountain range stretched the Inca Empire, Tawantinsuyu. It was perhaps the most efficient administrative entity of its time. Without the use of the wheel or writing as we understand it, the Incas ruled over a territory stretching 4,000 kilometers. They were connected by a network of paved roads called Capetñan, which surpassed the Roman system, and a unique system of warehouse accounting called quipu. State warehouses were filled with provisions and clothing in case of crop failure, which made famine virtually impossible, an achievement unattainable in Europe at that time. In North America, in the Mississippi Valley, there were complex societies of mound builders. The city of Cahokia, although it had passed its peak by the 15th century, demonstrated the ability of local cultures to create large proto-urban centers. In the Northeast, the Haudenosaunee, or Iroquois Confederacy, was forming, a political union with a developed system of checks and balances, effectively a prototype of a democratic constitution. These societies had enormous demographic potential and agriculture adapted to local conditions, based on corn, beans, and squash. The Europeans who arrived in 1492 had an advantage in iron metallurgy and gunpowder. However, these technologies alone did not guarantee victory. Spanish conquistadors such as Cortés and Pizarro won not because of their cannons, which were few in number, but because of political intrigue and, most importantly, smallpox, which preceded their troops, decapitating ruling dynasties and destroying the social fabric. If we remove the factor of biological collapse, the balance of power looks completely different. Let's assume that the history of contact between the continents had a different, more protracted chronology. Perhaps the Scandinavian settlements in Vinland or the Basque fishermen who visited Newfoundland in the 14th century brought Eurasian pathogens much earlier and in small doses. By 1492, the indigenous population of the Americas had already passed through the bottleneck of natural selection and restored its numbers, possessing a collective immunity similar to that of Europe or Asia. When Columbus's ships dropped anchor in the Bahamas, the sailors, many of whom were themselves carriers of disease, did not become angels of death. The first contacts unfolded according to a scenario similar to the real one, but with a different outcome. The Spanish established outposts on the islands of the Caribbean, but their attempt to advance onto the continent was met with an insurmountable obstacle. Hernán Cortés' expedition in 1519 lands on the coast of Mexico. As in our history, he finds allies among tribes dissatisfied with Aztec rule. However, when the Spaniards enter Tenochtitlan, they find themselves trapped. The city's population is healthy and full of strength, and the elite are not paralyzed by the epidemic. During the Night of Sorrows, the Spanish retreat turns into a complete defeat. Without the support of the smallpox epidemic, which in reality decimated the city's defenders during the siege, Cortés is unable to regroup. The Aztec war machine, quickly adapting to the enemy's tactics, destroys the remnants of the expedition. News of the defeat of the bearded men from the sea spreads across the continent. The myth of the divinity of the newcomers is destroyed. The Spanish crown, assessing the risks and costs, abandons a full-scale invasion. Instead of colonies, only fortified trading posts are established on the coast and islands, which are easier to defend with the fleet. A similar fate awaits Francisco Pizarro in the Andes. The Inca Empire, unweakened by civil war, which in reality was provoked by the death of the Inca from smallpox, meets a small detachment of Spaniards as a united monolith. Pizarro fails to capture Atahualpa, and the Spanish detachment simply dissolves into the vast empire, either being destroyed or assimilated as mercenaries and advisors. Europe realizes that America is not no man's land, but a territory of powerful sovereign states that must be reckoned with. The failure of direct military intervention does not mean the end of contact. On the contrary, an intensive exchange begins, but on a commercial basis. The main commodities that Europeans can offer in exchange for gold, silver, and exotic products are technology and animals. Horses, muskets, and steel tools began to spread across the continent, not as instruments of European conquest, but as acquisitions of the local elites. An era began in America similar to the emergence of the gunpowder empires in Asia. In Mesoamerica, the Triple Alliance of the Aztecs is transformed. Having gained access to iron and horses, the Aztec elite reforms the army. The Eagles and Jaguars cavalry appears, armed with steel spears. The priestly class, pragmatic in its approach to matters of power, integrated firearms into its military doctrine. Tenochtitlan became an impregnable fortress equipped with foundries where local craftsmen, quickly adopting the technology from captured or hired Europeans, began to cast their own cannons. In the Andes, the Incas used their excellent logistics for rapid modernization. Llamas as pack animals are supplemented by mules and horses, which speeds up communication along the empire's roads. The Incas, who had a rich tradition of metalworking, working with gold, silver, and bronze, quickly mastered iron production. Mountain fortresses in the Andes, such as Sacsayhuaman, were reinforced with bastions designed to withstand artillery. The state retained its socialist distribution structure, but was now armed with the latest technology of the 16th century. In North America, the effect of the arrival of horses and iron was even more dramatic. The tribes of the Great Plains mastered horse riding a century earlier, creating mobile and aggressive confederations that controlled vast territories. On the East Coast, the Iroquois League, acting as an intermediary in the fur trade with European trading posts, accumulates huge stocks of firearms. They become a regional superpower, blocking any attempts by Europeans to advance deeper into the continent beyond the coastline. America turns into a mosaic of powerful armed states jealously guarding their sovereignty. Meanwhile, in Europe, the lack of easy colonial prey provokes a deep economic and political crisis. In real history, the influx of cheap silver from Potosi and Aztec gold allowed Spain to finance its wars and later fueled global trade and the birth of capitalism. Without this resource, the price revolution of the 16th century would have unfolded differently or not at all. The Spanish Habsburg Empire, deprived of endless credit secured by American treasures, would have exhausted itself much more quickly in its struggles with France, England, and the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, which controlled the traditional trade routes to the east, retained its dominance for longer. The European powers found themselves locked in the western part of Eurasia. The Atlantic Ocean did not become Europe's internal sea, but remained a dangerous borderland. Attempts to find a route to India continue, but America becomes not a thoroughfare, but a giant obstacle, a continent that must either be circumnavigated or traded with at great expense. Social tensions within Europe are growing. Without the ability to send surplus people, religious dissidents, landless peasants, adventurers, To the colonies, European states are forced to solve demographic and religious problems within their borders. This leads to more fierce and protracted religious wars. The Reformation may take a more radical path, as Protestants have nowhere to flee, like the Puritans to New England, and are forced to fight for their existence on their native soil to the end. Europe's economy is developing more slowly, but perhaps more intensively. Unable to achieve extensive growth through colonies, Europeans are forced to think earlier about intensifying agriculture and production. The lack of cheap sugar, tobacco, and cotton grown by slave labor on plantations. The transatlantic slave trade on such a scale is economically unfeasible without colonial control of land, leaves these goods as luxury items. Europe remains more feudal, more closed, and less globalized by the 17th century. By the 17th and 18th centuries, relations between Europe and America had reached a new level. They finally stabilized in the form of mutually beneficial and equal trade. Huge viceroyalties or colonial possessions were no longer to be found on the maps. Instead, we see a network of fortified ports and trading posts. They are very reminiscent of European enclaves in Asia, such as Macau or Goa. The British hold small trading posts in what are now New York and Boston. The French control the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, while the Spanish have established themselves on the islands of the Caribbean and in the port of Veracruz. These areas are becoming veritable gateways between worlds. It is through them that there is a continuous exchange of goods, advanced ideas, and important diplomatic missions. The main exports from America are no longer the gold plundered by the conquistadors. They are honestly purchased furs, high-quality processed hides, and rare woods. Unique dyes and exotic agricultural crops are also in high demand. Potatoes and corn are making their way to Europe, but this process is much slower. It is carried out exclusively through established commercial channels. In the opposite direction, across the ocean, go complex machine tools, precision watches, and scientific instruments. Europeans bring books here and send their best specialists. Indian monarchs and supreme chiefs often send their sons to study abroad. They enrolled at the universities of Salamanca, the Sorbonne, and Oxford. But they did not go there to become vassals of the crown, but to bring home knowledge to strengthen their states. Gradually, a kind of Atlantic Silk Road is formed. Indigenous states become active and respected players in the global market. The merchant fleet of the Iroquois League and the heavy ships of the Inca Empire begin to appear in European ports. The Incas, who control the entire Pacific coast, establish direct trade with the East. They build routes to China and Japan, completely bypassing European intermediaries. Silver from the Andes now flows directly to Asia across the Pacific Ocean. This flow of precious metal enriches the South American empire, not the Spanish treasury. Europe loses its monopoly on global trade and is forced to reckon with new competitors. The economic center of gravity is shifting, creating a completely different financial map of the world. A unique syncretic culture is forming in the wealthy cities of America. The architecture of Tenochtitlan or Cusco in the 17th century amazes travelers. It combines the monumentality of ancient pyramids and Cyclopean masonry with elegant elements of the Baroque and Renaissance. This creates a unique visual style that cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. Ancient temples of the sun may contain complex astronomical instruments brought from Germany. Christianity is also penetrating the continent, but in a completely different way. It is spreading not by fire and sword, but through peaceful missionaries. Preachers are forced to adapt their teachings to local beliefs and traditions. As a result, new and distinctive churches are being created. They retain their Christian foundation, but remain completely independent of Rome. In this scenario, North America represents a particularly interesting and unique case of political evolution. History here took a completely different path than we are used to seeing in textbooks. Without the massive and uncontrolled influx of European settlers, who in reality brutally displaced the indigenous population, the demographic picture has remained the same. Powerful tribal alliances are forming here, which are quickly growing into full-fledged nation-states. They occupy vast territories and dictate their terms to the outside world. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also known as the Iroquois League, occupies a special place among them. This state formation extended its influence to the entire strategically important region of the Great Lakes. The power of this state is based on the strict control of the lucrative fur trade. In addition, they completely control the continent's key waterways, making them indispensable trading partners. Their famous political system, known as the Great Law of Peace, does not remain frozen in time. It actively evolves and adapts to the new realities of the global world. A complex, centralized bureaucracy is created to effectively manage the growing economy and large regular army. The Iroquois are gradually transitioning from a semi-nomadic lifestyle to settled intensive farming. They are building real cities out of wood and stone, surrounded by powerful artillery bastions modeled on European designs. In foreign policy, they showed remarkable diplomatic flexibility. The chiefs skillfully maneuvered between English and French colonial interests. They did not allow either European side to gain a decisive advantage in the region. Their diplomats become known as skilled and tough negotiators. Many of them are fluent in several European languages and have a deep understanding of their opponent's psychology. In the south of the continent, in the fertile Mississippi River Basin, significant changes are also taking place. Here, ancient chiefdoms, similar to the Natchez culture, are being revived and transformed. And access to horses and advanced cattle breeding techniques is changing the balance of power in the center of the continent. Great Plains tribes such as the Comanche and Lakota are creating vast nomadic empires. These new entities are establishing total control over the center of the continent. They become the main suppliers of meat and tanned hides for the entire region. They are a kind of Mongols of the New World, possessing fast and deadly cavalry. Both the coastal European trading posts and the sedentary states of the East are forced to reckon with them. The borders between all these entities are heavily guarded by patrols. The concept of the frontier as a zone of free exploration of wildlands, familiar to us, simply does not exist here. By the 19th century, North America looks like a colorful patchwork quilt of sovereign Indian nations. The Anglo-Saxon presence here is limited to a narrow strip of coastal city-states. They live exclusively from maritime trade and resemble the medieval Hanseatic League in their structure. There is no United States of America in the imperial sense that we are familiar with. Europeans remain only guests on the edge of a vast continent. The ideas of the Enlightenment and democracy, which originated in distant Europe, find an unexpected resonance here. They harmoniously overlap with the ancient traditions of Indian councils and the election of chiefs. This leads to the unique modernization of the political systems of indigenous peoples. They adopt the best Western practices of governance and technology. At the same time, they manage to fully preserve their cultural identity and originality. By the beginning of the 20th century, the world looks completely different. It is a bipolar or even multipolar system where the West is not the sole hegemon. The Industrial Revolution that began in Europe was quickly exported and adapted in America. Tenochtitlan and Cusco are industrial megacities with factories, railways, and electricity. These cities become centers of science and education, where local elites study engineering, medicine, and economics on a par with Europeans. Aztec and Inca engineers design bridges and dams, use the natural resources of their regions, and create unique technological solutions based on local traditions. Aztec oil and Inca copper are the most important commodities on world exchanges. These resources determine politics and the balance of power, as well as contribute to the development of industry on both continents, turning America into an equal participant in global processes. The linguistic map of the world is diverse. Spanish, English, and French remain the languages of Europe and international diplomacy, but the Western Hemisphere is dominated by Nahuatl, Quechua, and the Algonquian languages, which have their own writing systems, possibly based on Latin or developed from local scripts. These languages are actively used in science, literature, and government, making world culture much more diverse. International law is shaped not only by the interests of European powers, but also by American empires, which demand equal status and participate in the creation of new rules for trade and interaction between countries. Colonialism in Africa and Asia probably takes place, but European resources are more limited, and they face competition from American powers seeking markets. This forces European countries to act more cautiously, otherwise they risk facing the combined pressure of the New World states. The two world wars, if they happen, have a completely different configuration of alliances. Perhaps the Inca Empire would be an ally of Germany, and the Aztec Federation would support Britain. Or America would maintain strict neutrality, acting as an arbiter in the disputes of the old barbarians of Europe who continue to resolve conflicts in their usual military manner. Large American empires could play the role of peacemakers, creating platforms for diplomacy and preventing conflicts from spreading to their continent. Cultural exchange would lead to world art and philosophy being enriched by the concepts of indigenous peoples, which would not have been destroyed but would have developed into modern forms. Their views on the world, humanity, and nature are reflected in universities, art schools, and political movements. The ecological awareness characteristic of many Native American cultures became part of global political discourse much earlier than in our reality, leading to earlier attempts to preserve the planet's forests, rivers, and wildlife. Let's compare the outcome we know with this alternative. Our reality is built on a tragedy of unprecedented scale, the death of tens of millions of people, and the erasure of entire civilizations allowed Europe to make a leap forward, providing it with resources and space for expansion for 500 years to come. We perceive the modern map of America as a given, where indigenous peoples are marginalized minorities living on reservations. But if we look closely, it becomes clear that this outcome did not arise from the superiority of Europe, but thanks to the disappearance of huge societies that previously occupied the entire continent. In reality, many of these civilizations were advanced, with large cities, complex systems of government, and rich traditions. Without the epidemics brought by Europeans, they would have continued to exist, and the history of the New World would have been very different. In the scenario under consideration, the world is much closer and more complex. Europe does not get a free ticket to the future and is forced to negotiate, trade, and compete. It is a world without the hegemony of a single civilization. It is a world where globalization has arrived, but it is not Eurocentric, but polycentric. Faced with powerful states in the West, Europe would not have been able to conquer continents as easily as it did in our reality. It would have had to form long-term alliances, recognize the rights of other peoples, and take into account the influence of local cultures. The absence of colonial trauma in America might have made humanity more resistant to racism, as Europeans for centuries saw Native Americans not as savages, but as citizens of powerful states capable of military and economic resistance. And the fact that different civilizations would have coexisted for much longer would have led to a mixing of traditions and a more equal cultural exchange. The difference between our world and this alternative scenario lies not in the genius of military leaders or the correctness of religions. It lies in the invisible DNA chains of viruses and bacteria. Biological chance has determined the political map of the planet more than all the decisions of kings and emperors combined. It was infections that destroyed the foundations of many societies, devastating their economies, defenses, and political structures long before any actual encounters with Europeans. This history reminds us that the dominance of one culture over another is not a historical inevitability, but the result of a combination of circumstances, sometimes tragic and unpredictable. It shows that the course of history can depend on factors that are invisible to the naked eye, and that the fate of entire continents can be changed by microscopic organisms that appear at the wrong time and in the wrong place. We have traveled from 1492 to the present day in which America has remained sovereign. This exercise in alternative history shows how fragile the balance of power is and how much our present depends on factors that we often ignore. From microbiology to supply logistics. A world where Tenochtitlan stands alongside Tokyo and Paris seems like fantasy, but it was entirely possible if the immune systems of the inhabitants of the New World had been a little better prepared for the encounter. Subscribe so you don't miss new versions of history.